Special ad hoc meeting, December 12th, 2024.
Meeting will come to order at 4 o'clock. Updates to the zoning and plating map for the city of Bucyrus. Members, James Mee, Vicky Deshawn, Bill Stuckert, Landon Hill, Mike Keefe, Chair, is absent today. Under the understanding that Mr. Landon has something that Mr. Keefe wanted to bring up.
I think he was only referring to the fee schedule, which he had kind of marked one up. But what I provided to everybody before the meeting was coinciding with the other chapter that we're looking at, the 900 chapter review that is being done through Service Committee right now. They had provided some changes to the fee schedule because there is a section in the 900s that refers to fees, but then it refers back to this 1143.09, which we will be reviewing tonight. So the schedule of fees that I provided to you would have been marked up earlier this year. I think it's even before I came back upstairs, so it would have been like Dylan, Jeff Dunn, Tommy, when they originally went through that 900 chapter. So I just wanted to provide that, and that was one of Mike's things. And he did provide me with just some highlighted information, but it's mostly just grammar stuff, and we'll see what comes up on that.
Bucyrus Codified Ordinance 1141, Administrative Bodies and Their Duties. Is there anything you want to look at in these?
The position of, sorry, Mr. Chair. The position of zoning inspector established, just that first one there. I think there just may be some different terminology used throughout the code, maybe not even only in this portion, between zoning inspector, zoning administrator. There may even be, other terms used. I don't know for sure. So whether or not those all need to be.
So would it be easier to do that or just give a definition of the zoning inspector? So that covers the rest of them.
Whatever works.
I mean, we can go.
And I don't even know that's necessarily an issue, but I know for a fact it refers to it as a zoning administrator in other parts of the code.
We could go down and through the whole thing and change every one of them, but then we could put a different definition for zoning inspector and
Also includes
also
zoning
includes-
administrator.
Yeah, we change it in one line instead of
Yeah,
the entire.
whatever's easier, I think, is fine with me. I just thought there should be some type of reference to know that it's all the same thing.
Anybody else got any input on that? Bill? Vicki?
Nope, I'm fine.
Does everybody like that idea?
It's fine with me.
Is that okay with you?
That's with me?
So we can change that, put a definition
Sure.
at 1141 zoning inspector and give a definition of his titles?
May also be referred to as, I don't know.
That's not my phone. I have to turn mine on.
Do we need a motion to that effect?
Yes.
I would make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I will second.
Seconds, Bill. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do I vote? Aye. Motion passes. Definitions are in of the zoning inspector. Okay. Duties of the zoning inspectors, anything on that one?
Oh, and I guess I'm going to rely on Landon here since he held that position at one time. I mean,
We're all relying on Landon.
That's a scary proposition. I mean, it seems to encompass the majority of the responsibilities that go along with the position. You also add into the fact that just, through the Ask Me portion of it, it stipulates whatever other duties assigned by the service safety director as well. So I think this is kind of more from a city council perspective, because if you look at 1141.01 C8, other responsibilities directly pertaining to the enforcement of this ordinance that may be assigned by city council. So I think from the perspective of this ordinance, I think it pretty well encompasses the responsibilities of the position.
Awesome. So we're leaving that alone. I don't care for Mike's thing. Anything coming up next? Anybody got any comments? On the 1141?
1141.03 Board of Zoning Appeals. I just had a little concern about B1. The board shall adopt such rules and regulations consistent with this ordinance. The presence of 3 members shall constitute a quorum, and the concurring vote of 3 members of the board shall be necessary to reverse an order, requirement, decision, or determination of the zoning inspector. But that does not cover variance requests.
Or conditional use determinations or similar
Correct.
use determinations.
I think those should be included in there as well.
So accessory structures, right? What else?
Pardon?
What was the things that's not involved in that?
I would say that you could probably just refer to 1141.03 if you go to C, which is the powers and duties of the BZA. If we could reference all of the decisions they're able to make there, 1 through 7. To have that threshold for a quorum and a voting majority. Because it does include the similarity of uses, substitution of uses, variances, all those things are in the powers and duties.
Got that? Do I have a motion?
I just need for Landon, if you would please.
To clean that up?
Well, no, I sort of got lost there.
Yeah. Yeah, so what Bill's saying is, the specifics for a quorum and a concurring vote being 3 members is only stipulated as being to reverse an order, requirement, decision, or determination of the zoning inspector. So that would be in a case of an appeal.
Okay.
But we need that requirement to extend to the other powers and duties of the Board of Zoning Appeals, which would include, under item C, numbers 1 through 7.
Okay.
Exactly.
So we need to make a reference somewhere.
Yeah, however that works out best, and I guess maybe in Brandon's opinion, the cleanest way to do that.
So we're wanting to reference that under powers and duties, there also has to be the 3 members shall constitute a quorum and
I think so.
okay.
Do you have a recommendation on that, Brandon?
Can you put that, what you're trying to convey in writing? And then I can look at it and see if we can't fit it in there.
Yeah. Yep.
Cool.
How do we do that in form of a motion?
Thank you.
Upper right.
Hmm?
The upper part of it. Powers and duties, 1 through 7. So you want to, no? Renumber them and add that in at the top? Or just add a number 8? 3 members constitutes a quorum.
I think it could be the addition of a sentence under B1 that these same requirements of a quorum and concurring vote are required for all the powers and duties listed below in C1 through 8. Something along those lines.
1 through 7?
Oh, it's a 7, yes. Thank
Sorry.
you.
You knew I had to put my
Yeah,
2
that's
cents
it.
in
Yes,
there.
I appreciate that.
I think that would be the easier,
Yeah.
what you said.
You can have that, by the way,
Thank you.
since Miranda didn't give you one.
Usually you bring your computer.
Just get out of court. I almost didn't make it on time.
That's not allowed.
It's not allowed, huh?
1141.04, powers of zoning inspector, board zoning and appeals, city.
Well, now, did we have to do a vote or anything on what you said?
Yes. He made the motion. I didn't hear anybody second it.
I will make that motion.
And I will second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're at 1141.04, powers of zoning inspector, board of zoning appeals, and the city council on matters of appeals.
I think that makes good sense the way it's stated.
Bill, you good?
Yes, I'm good with that one.
Vicki?
Yes, I'm fine.
Good. Law director?
Yeah. Makes sense the way it reads.
Did we skip 1141.02, planning commission?
Oops. Establish one.
I was thinking we went from 1141.01 right in, then to
I do
11.
believe you're right.
Well, I guess we did.
We're gonna blame Bill on that, he jumped ahead.
I think Mr. B asked if there was anything
Did he?
else in the 1141 section.
Okay, then I did not hear
There was nothing
that.
commented about the planning commission. I jumped out to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
So just for aesthetics, is there anything in 1141.02 planning commission that anybody,
A lot of that references Ohio Revised Code. And there could be the potential there to add powers and duties outside of what are included in the revised code, but I don't know specifically what those are offhand. But that seems to be what what planning commission typically looks at is listed there below their powers and duties.
Okay. So Bill's good with that. Landon's good with that. Vicky,
Yes.
you're good with that. Okay, moving on to chapter 1143. Enforcement and penalties. So 1143.01, zoning permits required. Any comments? Seeing none, we'll move on to 1143.02, continuous under which a zoning permit is required. So a zoning permit is required for any of the following. That's pretty straightforward. So moving on, if nobody has a comment on 1143.02, seeing none. 1143.03, applications for zoning permits.
The requirements of 5 copies of the application to be provided seems a little excessive and wasteful to me. I don't know if it's simply because this is from like 2002 or whenever we passed the zoning code. But I mean, realistically, that number could be 1 or, 2 at most. It's quite easy to scan a document now, make it digital and share it with whoever needs access to it.
Okay, repeat that.
What would that be, the third sentence in the paragraph there, requiring 5 copies of the application shall be provided. I think that's wasteful. If you intend to have multiple copies, I would say 2 at the most, but if we ever need to share anything with, say, Richland County Building Department or whoever, we usually just scan it in and communicate that via email or whatever.
Fax or email or.
Right. So making them provide 5 copies of an application seems, and they never do. I know, when I was in the position, I didn't expect people to come up with 5 copies of the application either, so.
So you just store that information in your computer, correct? That we-
We keep a physical copy of any building and zoning permit on file in our file cabinets.
Okay.
So that requirement is of the applicant.
Yes,
Okay.
upon submission of the zoning permit, which I'd say you could either remove it, or if you want to say 2 copies, but 5 is certainly excessive in my opinion.
Well, as long as you've got 1 copy, I don't see why we need any more, because you can scan it in and.
And then the question comes up, when you say copies, is that number in addition to the actual application itself?
To me, I would consider the application, the original application, as staying here, being filed.
Right. So then my question is, let's say we would say we would reduce it to 2 copies of the application. I mean, well, I guess there it says that, 2 copies of the application. So you are talking application, and then, so they're going to give you 2 copies and the original application. I mean,
I'd be happy with just the original.
when it says you have 5
Truthfully.
copies of the application shall be provided.
Especially if you're getting into, you know, say, commercial developments and engineer drawings, architectural drawings. Having them submit multiple copies of that is extremely wasteful because we don't even have the oversight over the commercial inspection process. That all goes to Richland County. It's good to have a set on hand here, but if we're requiring multiple copies of that included with the application, that's wasteful and costly for everybody involved. So I would say, you know, we just need the 1 hard copy. We put it on file in the file cabinet. We can scan them and send them to whoever.
The one original application you're saying?
Yep.
Yeah, yeah.
So no copies, just the
Yeah, I wonder if
application
you just
itself.
strike that out, yeah.
Yeah.
Do I have a motion to remove 5 copies and just have the original application filed with the zoning?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Perfection. Okay, everybody's okay with A through K?
Yes.
All right, moving on to 1-1, yes, sir.
Before we move on, did anybody want to try and define what substantially completed meant?
You were reading that where?
The second sentence and
Yep.
At
Second
the top.
sentence. That the permit shall expire and shall be revoked if work is not substantially completed within 1 year.
Okay.
Substantially completed's ambiguous, but it's not a huge deal. Just wanted to know while we're at it if y'all wanted to come up with a definition.
Where is that we're talking about?
1143.03, application for zoning permit, sentence 2.
Each application. Work is not substantially completed within 1 year.
Yes, I think we should have a definition of what substantially completed means.
So we take substantially out of it completely and just put completed. I don't know, do we want to revoke?
Well, I think if we do that, and then, not to get ahead to the next section, but I think there could be a change in the next section that could accommodate that. If we were to remove substantially and just say it needed to be completed, if we were to alter the following, 1143.04 approval of zoning permits, there is it does offer the ability to get an extension on that. It's currently worded to be through the Board of Zoning Appeals, but I think we could change that to give the zoning administrator some discretion in those matters. And, you know, things happen, materials
Yeah, because it would take a
can be
long,
hard to get.
and it would take a long time for it to get to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Yeah. So in my previous experience, if I think they're making a good faith effort and, you know, they ran on hard times and didn't have money for materials, but they'd have it in 3 months, I I don't think we should be in a position to try and shut them down because of things like that. And should give the zoning administrator some discretion in offering extensions if they are not fully completed within the 1 year.
So with that being said, then we really don't want that word substantially up there.
Probably not.
Because that sort of contradicts then the 1143.04, because there it says that it shall be conditioned upon the completion of work within 1 year, not substantially completed, it's upon the completion.
Yep.
So we want to take substantially out.
And then alter extension is approved by the Board of Zoning Appeals to extension is approved by zoning administrator.
Yes. So the motion would be taking substantially out, then in 1143.04, approval of zoning permits. Take out Board of Zonings and put in zoning administrator. That sound good? Check
Now,
everything out with you.
zoning administrator
I
and
was gonna say,
zoning
or
inspector.
Yeah, whatever, yeah. Inspector is in the same paragraph, but if we're, for continuity's sake, I would say call it zoning inspector. And up at the top, our previous alteration will also include that duty to include the administrator as well, so. But for this purpose, I would say, since it already says zoning inspector 3 times in that area, we should probably have some continuity.
Okay, everybody knows what we're talking about, so can I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Need a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. We overlapped into 1143.04, approval of zoning permits, so does anybody have anything else in that? Hearing none. We're moving on to 1143.05, submission to the Director of the Department of Transportation. Submission to the Director of Transportation.
This is one that Mike reached out to somebody at ODOT and had a chat with them, and he filled me in on it, but I can't remember what he told me. And truthfully, it's the way they made it sound was people don't often follow through on it anyway, but yeah, for any zoning permit being issued that affects land within 300 feet of the center line of a proposed new highway or highway for which changes are proposed. He reached out and got some information on it, but like I said, I can't remember the specifics, what he relayed to me on that.
So it's good to have in case we need it, but
I
nobody
think
uses it.
I think so.
So essentially, this is just to ensure that zoning permit isn't granted in a case where there's a road that could potentially have roadwork expansion or something done to it.
Something along those lines, yeah.
Yeah.
So everybody's favorable just to leave this alone.
Yes, I am.
I am too.
I wouldn't have enough knowledge to change it at this point.
We can always come back when Mike's here. 1143.06, records of zoning permits. All records of the zoning permits shall be kept on file in the office of the zoning inspector, and copies shall be made available to any person upon request. Sounds legit.
Yeah, and as far as, our records retention requires that anyway. I mean,
What is your retention, just for the,
there's all kinds of them. I would have to
Depending
pull out
on
the
what it
actual.
is?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, depending
okay.
on if it's a permit or a contractor registration or, you know, whatever it is. It varies.
Okay. We're back to 1143.07, exploration of zoning permits.
The last sentence where it talks about extension granted by the Board of Zoning Appeals,
Change that to zoning
change that,
inspector.
yeah, to zoning inspector.
Do I have a motion to change Board of Zoning to zoning inspector?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. 1143.08, certificate of zoning compliance.
I think all this is okay. I just would point out that under item A, the last sentence, a certificate of zoning compliance may be a part of the zoning permit, which is basically how we've always operated there. Having an approved zoning permit basically functions as what this is referring to as a certificate of zoning compliance. Sometimes people confuse those with certificates of occupancy, which are not issued by the city of Bucyrus. Those are issued by Richland County Building Department. But all of this is okay with me.
Well, shouldn't a certificate of zoning compliance be issued after the completion of the work? Isn't there a need to verify that the work has been done?
I think it's always been the fact that the zoning permit being issued and then not revoked for any reason serves as it being the zoning, if that makes sense. It's kind of
Because
how
I thought I read something to the extent that it's the requirement or the applicant would be responsible for requesting the certificate of zoning compliance. Where did I read that?
it's the next item, but
Yeah.
like, it's always kind of just been built into the zoning permit in the way that I've looked at it, and just simply based off that last sentence under item A, that a certificate of zoning compliance can be a part of the zoning permit. Essentially, if you have an approved zoning permit, the work is completed, there's no issues, there's no revocation of that zoning permit, it then acts as the certificate of zoning compliance. That's why we have people, well, I would always have people post the permit application in their window or front door while they're doing the work. And then after the fact, I tell them to keep it for their records. But that's how I've always read that, I guess.
Okay. I was asking because I did have a question from an individual that we had granted for an accessory structure on a property without residential, that he never received any confirmation from the city after he had completed it that everything was okay. So, said,
If he would come to
Just didn't
zoning,
know.
do you have a certificate of completion that you could give him?
No, like I said, it's always been a part of the zoning permit, essentially. If you have an approved zoning permit that was never revoked,
Okay.
so if you just never hear anything back from the city, you're okay.
yeah. No news is
All right.
good news.
As far as the city's concerned, probably. Okay, we good through A through D? We can move on to 1143.09, scheduled of fees, charges, and expenses.
And that would be what I provided you guys there at the beginning of the meeting. Like I said, under the review of those 900 ordinances currently being done through Service Committee, because in the 900s it does reference it back to the 1143.09, that, I don't know if you called a committee or whatever, whoever was looking at those, marked up some increases to the fees and charges and expenses related to permitting. I don't think there's anything too drastic in there, and, you know, just based on,
Okay, would this, so Brandon, would this be separate from the Title IX? Or would this be part of the Title IX?
I think it should be covered under Title IX. What do you think, Chris?
Chapter 9, yes.
that's why I just refer to it as 900. I don't want to get correct.
So should this be a separate piece of ordinance or part of Title IX? That's my question.
I think it should be part of Chapter 9.
Okay.
So that would be 9.
3?
Maybe it's not even in there. It's not. That's chapter 13. 1300s. So they must have just been looking at that at the same time. Again, I think this is before I came back upstairs and got involved in the process of looking at the 900s, but it's actually 1301.03. Fees for building permits are now published separately pursuant to 1143.09 of the Planning and Zoning Code, is how that reads, Brandon.
Gotcha.
Chris, did you discuss, since you're here, did you discuss those at all?
We went over the new, the permit fees for all that stuff. We didn't actually reference it back to anything else. We just went over that and raised those up to what we thought would be more reasonable for today's times.
Okay, and that reflects these?
Yes, it's the same thing.
Oh, that's all I wanted to know.
Yeah.
So do I need a motion to accept the new fees?
So how do these new fees reflect the actual cost to the city for handling these permits and so forth? I mean, are they in line with what it actually costs the city to do, or?
Probably have to.
I think it'd be an administrative question since they're the ones that actually changed the prices and wanted it done.
And you
I'm
know,
assuming they would have done that.
and it probably differs from application to application depending on what's the circumstances around each individual submission. Some are certainly going to take more time than others, but you know, the zoning administrator is one of our highly paid positions in the city, so his time, I guess, is what you're looking at there.
Well, I just see a lot of these are double what they previously were, and public's going to probably say, well, why did you double it? And I realize that these fees have been in existence at these amounts for many, many years, so.
Yeah, probably over 20.
Higher
More than,
than that.
So I mean, essentially, you're looking
Way
at,
longer than that.
you know, the most common things we see for residential purposes that come through the zoning office. You know, a fence will go from being a $10 permit to a $20 permit. an accessory structure, which requires both a building permit and a zoning permit, would then go from currently $35 total to $55 total. So it's, I agree with Bill, it is an increase. But I suspect our wages and whatnot have increased in the meantime.
Any more comments, Bill?
Yeah, well, I don't think that even at these rates, they're going to cover the fees of the
Exactly.
costs for
Probably
So, I
not.
mean,
But we also don't want, I don't want someone to have to come in here and pay $100 to put a fence up either.
right.
We don't want to discourage them from
Developing the
improving the
correct.
property, developing the property.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
So do I need a motion to adopt these into the zoning code?
Correct.
I'd be willing to entertain a motion to adopt the new fees and expenses, charges. Wait a minute. Schedule of fees and charges and expenses. I need a motion for that.
I will make a motion to accept the schedule of fees and charges and expenses updated.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Solely adopted. On to 1143.10 violations. Comments on A? B? C, complaints regarding violations, or D, penalties for violations. So this falls under your realm.
I was gonna say, I've got a quarrel with the part that says, "and in addition shall pay all costs and expenses involved in the case." I think we should take that out.
The last sentence.
Yep.
Where are we at here, Jim?
We are 1143.10 violations, and we are at the bottom of D.
D.
The last sentence, penalties as above shall
Okay.
apply unless penalties, you got it. You
So
better-
right after it says that it's an unclassified misdemeanor, and then says fine not less than $50 or more than $500, and in addition, pay all costs and expenses involved in the case. I recommend that we take out the part that says that they shall pay all costs and expenses involved in the case.
So it's in the middle of D. All costs and expenses involved in the case.
Why do you think that, Brandon?
That's what I'm wondering.
I
So,
was going to ask that too.
one, it takes away my discretion. Court costs are something that you use to negotiate a resolution to the case. It also takes away discretion from the court. And ultimately, the court gets to, should, and usually does, get to decide whether or not there's costs or so on associated with the case.
So he's asking for negotiation powers, right?
Pretty much. I mean, anything that takes away my discretion and the court's discretion necessarily inhibits any negotiation to resolve the case before trial.
Okay, let's go around the room. Landon, how do you feel?
Are costs and expenses involved in the case? Would it be an instance where someone who has committed whatever offense has to pay back your salary for the time that you spent working on the case? Do you think that's what that's referring to, or am I
No,
misunderstanding?
so it could be read that way, but once you put on your judge hat, the only way that could be read is paying court costs, subpoena fees, any warrant fees, stuff like that.
Are those absorbed by the city in these instances?
No.
Okay. If that's the case, then yeah. And ultimately, the goal from our office is not to get to the point where we ever have to do this. You know, we send our notices of violation, attempt to make communication, attempt to make it right, go to the Board of Zoning, you know, whatever it takes to avoid these things. But yeah, if you feel comfortable with that, I don't know enough to argue with you.
Now, did you say we want to remove where it says shall pay all costs and expenses involved in the case?
Correct.
Do we want to also take out and in addition and put a period after 500?
Yeah, that's where I thought it should start for removal.
Or it said, any person who violates this ordinance or fails to comply with any of its requirements shall, upon conviction thereof, be fined not less than $50 or more than 500, period. Because if you leave in and in addition, that and in addition is the very verbiage after it that we're wanting to take out.
Right.
It relates to that. Yep. Bill, you got any comments on this? Taking that out?
I agree with Vicki on starting with and in addition shall.
Okay, entertain a motion for and removing and in addition shall pay all costs and expenses involved in this case, in the case. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Bill? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor of removing, say aye.
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 Aye. Moving on down to E, void zoning permits.
Now, I don't know if under number 2, where it talks about by the Board of Zoning Appeals, is that another where we want the zoning inspector, or is this something different? I guess this is a Board of Zoning.
If you look at E1A,
Okay,
the zoning permit was issued contrary to the provisions of this ordinance by the zoning inspector.
okay.
Probably need to keep the BZA there. To me, that reads like it would be maybe an instance where someone disagrees with the decision of the zoning administrator and files an appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Okay.
And then I guess it's an additional layer of oversight to where the zoning inspector couldn't just say, oh, I don't like that, I'm revoking the zoning permit. Not that that would happen, but, you know.
You good with that, Vicky?
I'm reading here.
Okay. Take your time.
What is zoning? I'm having one of those brain. Do you understand what it's saying, Bill? Am I being not understanding here? Zoning permit shall be void if any of the following conditions exist. Was issued contrary.
So is that saying let's just take A for example, is that saying the zoning permit issuer was lied to?
I think that would be B. A, I think would be,
False statement?
you know, any, let's see how it's worded. Basically, anybody with a vested interest in a certain property can file an appeal to the Board of Zoning Appeals related to any decision that's made by the zoning administrator. So I think that's probably what A is referring to, would be if a neighbor disagrees with the interpretation of the ordinance as it was used as the basis for approval for a zoning permit.
The zoning
Okay,
contrary.
I'm getting it.
I can kind of understand your confusion there, Vicki, about it, but I think that what it's trying to do there is allow the Board of Zoning Appeals to make the decisions based on A through C, essentially.
Yeah, that verbiage is,
Because it says, okay, like, a zoning permit shall be void if any of the following conditions exist. And we'll just take A. The zoning permit was issued contrary to the provisions of this ordinance by the zoning inspector. Then it goes to 2, and it says, so when a zoning permit has been declared void, which that's one of the reasons it's void if it was issued contrary by the zoning inspector, then when a zoning permit has been declared void for any of the above reasons by the Board of Zoning Appeals. Okay, so it's saying a zoning permit shall be void if any of the following conditions exist. Then 2 comes to where then the Board of Zoning Appeal is making
would
the
get
decision
involved.
it is.
and not to jump ahead, or if we're
Okay.
going to get that far, I know we're approaching 5 o'clock, but the verbiage for anybody who can submit an appeal to the BZA reads, appeals concerning interpretation or administration of this ordinance may be taken by any owner of the property with substantial interest in the matter who is adversely affected, or a governmental officer, department, commission, or bureau. So any of those could appeal the zoning administrator's interpretation of this ordinance on which they based the issuance of the permit. At which point, all appeals go to the BZA. They would be making that determination to declare said permit void. something that I've never seen happen. I'm sure it's quite rare.
What do you think? Brandon?
I mean, it's something I can look at, something I can think about, but I don't have an answer for you right now.
Okay. I think it'd probably be a better word than contrary. Be more specific, maybe.
I mean, it's like they're saying the zoning permit shall be void if any of these conditions occur. So right off the bat, it's saying if this happens, it's void. But then 2 comes along and talks about the Board of Zoning Appeals declaring it void.
I think it's their responsibility to say that one of those
Okay.
conditions exists.
Gotcha.
Is how I
Okay.
understand it.
I can go with that.
Okay. So we good with that as is? We want Brandon, Mr. Goldberg to look at it?
Well, I don't know. It depends if I go home tonight and I can't go to sleep
Tossing and
because I'm
turning.
thinking about it.
Then you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and say, let me read that again.
Yes.
I've been there.
She'll be here tomorrow. I've been up since 3 a.m.
I think maybe we should have Mr. Goldberg look at this.
I'm gonna say just
Make
add
it
it
a
to the
little
list.
more
Yeah.
understandable.
Yeah, just add it to the list.
Okay. Chapter 1145, amendments. Power of City Council. So this pretty much follows the flow chart.
Yes. Yep. That's where it comes from.
So actually the flow chart comes from this more or less.
Yep.
So you know my problem with the flow chart. It takes a long, long time. I mean, if everything goes perfectly, it takes 5 to 6 months.
Yeah. 4 to 6.
In some cases, 10 to 13 months.
Yeah. Depend. Yeah.
So everybody like this?
I'm okay with it.
If there's any way possible we can shorten that list up, that would be awesome.
Which is, I mean, you have the 30 days built in for notice on the public hearings. That's a large chunk of it. When anything comes from plating committee, and specifically now that I'm the secretary of the planning commission, you know you can come up and sit down and say, hey, try to schedule this planning commission as quickly as you can. So
We just did that, I
You
believe.
just did that, yes. And in fact, we're having a planning commission meeting on Tuesday because of that.
Yeah.
But, you know, we can try and cut it down as much as we can in the 2 weeks in between committee meetings. Try to have a planning commission meeting to get it back to that plating committee without sacrificing another 2 weeks. And that's always my intention with these things. Sometimes it doesn't work out,
I know.
but when possible, you know, I'm always gonna make that effort. I don't wanna hold up anything any more than it
And we
needs to.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do. But Landon, you like that the way it is?
I mean, what type of notice, does ORC have requirements for notices for public hearings, I guess is a question that would need to be answered.
I've always been told it's a 30-day notice for public hearings. I mean, it's one of those things where it's like a big change and it could affect more than one person. So
Yeah.
you want to give people ample notice for those things. And I have to go around and I have to post legislation, and the posting for legislation is 30 days. So if I'm going around posting them in the same areas, you would think that I would also leave them up for 30 days.
And that's a good point. You know, many of these things could be substantial changes to large areas that could affect,
Yeah, I understand that.
yeah.
Some things you don't like, but you understand it, so you have to go with the flow. It's part of the job, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think structurally there's a way to shorten this up.
Okay.
We just have to be quick about it as
When it hits,
committee members, as planning commission secretary, the involved parties just need to be try to be as quick about it as possible, which I try to do, but.
I know you're great at it, so. Okay.
And this here, we're referring to the whole chapter 1145. Or are we just doing each little section here?
We can do anything you want. If you want.
I think he was referring to the entirety of the
We can go through the,
1145.
Yeah, which, yes.
yeah. Does anybody have any comments in the 1145 as complete from,
I would just point to 1145.02, that there are multiple ways by which this process can begin. It is not necessarily only with the applicant filing an application to the planning commission. It also can originate via a referral from plating committee.
okay. Well, I really like the way the resurfacing came through, even though there was 5 changes through it, but I think it's bulletproof now.
And that's part of the process too.
I know, and it came back and forth
Yeah.
4 or 5 times, so.
Yep, originating in planning commission, going to public hearing, part of that process is adding those changes. And I think that's why those times are kind of built in there too, I guess, you know,
Yeah.
to incorporate any changes that come about as the public are given their opportunities to submit their feedback.
And I realized after I ran it through the administration, then I came back through Jeff Dunn, and Jeff Dunn says, oh, you might want to add this, and I brought it to you, and he's like, oh, you might want to add this. I guess it's a good system.
The gears of local government grind slowly.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to. Government is supposed to be inefficient. Keeps you guys from hurting people.
I don't want to hurt anybody.
No, government does though.
Yeah. 1145.02. You didn't have any changes for that, right?
No, I just,
Pointing that out.
yeah, I just wanted to note that.
Okay. Contents of applications and transmittals of resolutions to planning commissions. It's 1145.04. And we have 115.05, recommendations by the planning commission.
Now, that's interesting, the 1145.04. It says transmittal of resolution to planning commission, but then it says upon referral of the proposed ordinance. I mean, are they, or it says transmittal of resolution,
Transmittal of resolution to planning commission.
but it's an ordinance when we have changes to the zoning. I don't know if that word resolution is meaning like our council resolution? Or if, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Transmittal of resolution to the planning commission.
So transmittal means change.
No, I don't think transmittal, I think resolution, because it's an ordinance.
Yeah, and it says proposed ordinance in the body.
Yeah. And it is an ordinance that's given.
So we want to change resolution to ordinance.
I think so.
Sound good, Brandon?
Sounds good to me.
Anybody else have any comments on 1145.04, transmittal of resolutions to planning commission to change resolutions to ordinance? If not, can I have a motion?
I so move.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Got that? 1145.04, recommendations by the planning commission.
I have a comment for that one.
Okay.
We might actually be able to squirrel 16 days out of this. Instead of giving them 30 days, you could give them 14 days.
Would that be a problem, Landon?
Not all the time. There could be instances in which that could be a problem, depending on schedules of the members who comprise the planning commission.
I thought didn't somebody say there was a 24-hour notice for the planning commission the other day?
That's the shortest amount of time you can hold a meeting. Like
Yeah.
a time frame, you have to give at least 24 hours notice per the Ohio Sunshine Laws.
Okay.
Oh, no, this isn't 30-day notice of the meeting, it's 30 days
Of the first meeting.
of the first meeting.
After you guys refer it to planning commission,
That
we
they
have to
give
have the
the
meeting.
recommendation.
Yeah.
We have to have
Either.
a meeting within 30 days. No, we have to make a recommendation within 30 days.
Right. Make that recommendation within 2 weeks instead of 4.
That shouldn't be a problem because you're up here, you write it out, right? I mean, you're up here every day.
Famous last words. So it would be referred to planning commission on a Thursday.
Out of committee. Why?
I would have to have that planning commission meeting completed with a recommendation back to committee.
So this essentially is giving the planning commission 30 days to respond to the request.
So I got.
Right, so after your hearing, you just have 30 days to say, adopt it as is or deny it. Which is going to be the next
Oh,
part.
okay. It's
Or
not saying I
change.
have to have, okay. I
Or
see
these
what
are
you're
your, these are the planning commission's recommendations.
saying. Okay.
So instead of 30
That's
days
fine,
to get
that's
the
fine.
report in, you have 14
That's
days.
fine,
Yeah.
because I'll have it as soon as we meet. I thought we were saying we had to have that meeting within 14 days, and scheduling wise, sometimes that just may not be possible.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
no, I'm okay with that.
Now hang on to that enthusiasm.
I like that.
My next comment is going to be instead, because this gives them the opportunity to pass it as is or deny it. I recommend you add in comments if they deny it as to why they don't like it.
Which
That
would,
would speed up the process.
that would all be in the minutes too, correct?
could be, but it could also just be in the recommendation.
Be approved as requested. So there's no in between, it's either approved as requested or
I thought-
denied.
Right.
I guess I never read this because.
But if you want it denied, I think it'd be reasonable that you
Explain that.
can explain it. It would speed the process along as to
Or-
why y'all aren't happy about it.
Or can it be approved with potential recommendations? Does it have to be approved as requested? Can't the planning commission provide feedback and still approve it with some?
So on this, it says, planning commission gives recommendations to council. 1145. It doesn't say anything about denial or,
Yeah, I think Brandon's correct. I think there needs to be the ability for them to give recommendations, and if they deny it, yeah, there should probably be some explanation as to why. Maybe Mr. Goldberg could work something up in that
I can
section.
absolutely do that.
Miranda, add it to the list. She's awesome, ain't she?
She is.
One 1145.06, actions by city council. Behave.
Well, now, isn't,
This says give 30 days notice.
That's for the public hearing portion of it.
and isn't this the one there, now we're putting out the sign?
Yes.
Because here they're talking about,
Which was kind of just.
first-class mail, at least 20 days, but that's if they're intending to remove or redistrict 10 or less 10 or less parcels of land.
Yeah.
Okay,
And that was
so-
kind of just an above and beyond thing, that after we instituted the requirement for posting of signs for Board of Zoning Appeals hearings, I just started utilizing those same signs for public hearings related to the zoning code. It's not necessarily in here that I had to do so, but we just did.
But is that something that we should maybe
We can,
change?
yeah, I mean, we can use those same signs. I designed them to be multi-use. There would just be, there will be instances where, you know, say you are changing a specific use in the downtown business district. That's a large area. There wouldn't necessarily be a specific point where you would set
Right.
a sign.
Okay,
Now for, you know, if it, for instance, we'll have the zoning reclassification coming up on Woodlawn, that's an easy one. You'll go out there and you'll put it right in front of the church, say this is gonna be subject to a zoning reclassification. But if we make it a requirement, it may get tricky if you're
I see.
talking about
Okay.
a larger issue.
Yeah.
So I think it's
understand
just a
that.
good faith effort by the zoning inspector to, when applicable, place it where it can, you know, the information can reach more people.
and so maybe it's not necessary to even make reference at all?
Probably not.
Okay,
You know, this will be Mike's first public hearing coming up, and I'll encourage him to put the sign out when
Okay.
when it's applicable.
okay.
So you good, Bill?
Yes, I'm good with that.
Okay. display of relevant materials, action by city council, criteria.
Now, action by city council, and I mean, I know I should know this, but where it talks about approved by not less than 3/4 of the membership. Is 3/4, you know, we have 2/3 and then we have majority.
Right. 3/4 would be, what, 75%? So,
Six.
people.
So this is reading that if it's in line with recommendations submitted by planning commission, it's just a concurrence of at least the majority. But if it differs from or departs from the recommendations submitted by planning commission, then it requires 3/4 membership of city council to override what the planning commission recommended.
Okay.
And the way that math works is you would need 6 out of the 7 to vote for it.
And so then when you're preparing the legislation where it says 2/3 or a majority, what would the verbiage be? Because it
Or
wouldn't be
3/4.
either one of those. You would just say 3/4?
Mhm.
Okay. And you say that's 6 out of 7?
Correct. Technically, it's 5.25 council members, but
So can we change that to majority, just given our past? We don't know what the future brings.
I recommend against that.
Yeah,
Yes.
Okay.
okay.
You just have to remember that if for any reason there would be a piece of legislation prepared that goes against what the planning commission recommended, that it needs to be passed by 3/4 of council.
Essentially, 2/3 and 3/4 is remotely the same.
See, I did not do well in math.
Fractions are tough.
It's still both over 75%. I don't know the exact, I don't know if it's the exact same percentage, but,
2/3 is 66%. Right.
but still 6 members.
Sure. But what if the city gets bigger?
We need a bigger council chambers.
I'm just saying, like, isn't that the point? Like, we
I
grow
mean,
the city,
sure.
we get more people.
That's the whole idea behind this.
True. I was gonna say, I'm not here for a hobby. I'm here to make the city better. Make it bigger, make it better.
Okay, well, you answered my question on that.
All right, we're good with that, right?
But to be clear on that,
Okay.
we're saying that it's 3/4 of the total membership of the city council, not members present.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Under D3, for some reason, amendment is hyphenated. I could probably just remove that hyphen.
Do you need a vote on removing it right now?
Yes.
But I don't necessarily have any issues with the criteria itself. I think those are the things that we should take into consideration when making these changes.
Okay, we need a motion.
See it.
Very top line, about the middle, it says amendment.
It's number 3.
Yeah, 1145.06D3.
Ah, I'm on the wrong page. Duh.
I'm gonna point that out, but I'll figure it out.
I would make the motion to remove that unnecessary hyphen.
Do I have a second?
I will second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Effective date for referendum, such. Are we good with the rest, E and F? Bill, you good with it?
Yes.
I think so.
Yes.
Well, it's 20 after 5, and we're at chapter 1147.
That's a good stopping point.
So, good stopping point for everyone?
Sounds good to me.
Excellent. I don't need a motion, do I?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I?
I do think so.
Not in committee meetings.
Not in committee.
I don't think so.
Then you just adjourn. I'm not gonna stand in your way.
Unless you wanted to set up the next meeting.
You got the date.
Yeah, that's right.
Probably not.
Probably won't be until the new year.
Yeah,
at
that's
this
what I'm
point.
thinking. Why don't you just email us?
After the holidays.
Yeah.
Okay.
January, we won't have nothing to do, so. That was a joke. Meeting adjourned,
I think Mike said he's going to be going for a part of
5:23.
Check
Mike?
this.